to Justice Quest.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm your host, Thomas O'Neill. If you need a title in front of my name, I could be known as Reverend there. So that's, we have an exciting show today, and a lot of it's going to do with gun control again and the continuing saga of Barry Obama's ugly ass library. I mean, that thing looks kind of something out of the Soviet Union, and that would be fitting since he is a communist. Okay, so I have said it, and I'm not afraid to say it, because what can he do to me? Yeah, he can go ahead and do whatever, try and do whatever, but the Lord is my shepherd. He will go ahead and protect me. Anyway, on Friday, I couldn't find two scriptures, and I would like to go ahead and provide them with you today. We were talking about how evildoers are sitting there telegraphing what they're going to do, and you people aren't listening. You don't understand that this is from God. Psalm 64, 7 and 8 says, he will make them stumble over their own tongue. That's God telling these people that are telling you that this is what they're going to do. When they say they're coming out with a social credit score, and I'll be at the bottom of that list, I'll tell you that right now. And they're doing all these things and saying they're going to introduce socialism to America. This is them telegraphing you what they're going to be doing, including the World Economic Forum spokesperson that said that, you're going to own nothing and you will like it. Yeah, they're intending to crash this economy. All right. They've already come out and said that. They want to introduce their new world order, people. We in the United States do not have to go ahead and take part in this. And I'm trying to tell you that. Oh boy, where do we go? All right. And also, another scripture has said that, we have to do something. And if we don't slay this Goliath appearing before us like a roaring lion, and we go ahead and don't destroy him with our slings, all right, we are cowards. In Revelation 21:8, that says, cowards, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters shall have their part in the lake of fire. Yeah, cowards. I don't know how, God has made it very clear that we have something to do. We have a desperate a very prominent role to play. We have to keep our government that God has given us. I have gone ahead and researched the Revolutionary War, and I'm convinced that he formed this country out of 13 colonies in the wilderness to go ahead and be a shining light to the rest of the world. And for years, they would go ahead and we would welcome immigrants to these shores. Very strict control, but now Biden has gone ahead and we've got pictures of Biden going ahead and taking down the fence at our southern border to let the migrants pour in, during which time he was mandating masks and vaccines for everybody, but these people were getting a free pass. That does not, and they were bringing in all sorts of exotic diseases. That was reported too, Oh boy, where can we go? I was talking with a friend of mine this weekend, and which I had a fantastic weekend, by the way. We went to a turkey barbecue, the world's largest turkey barbecue, and had a grand time. And while I was there, I went ahead and met a friend of mine, and we were sitting there talking about this. And I said, dude, I don't see any other recourse than Jesus coming back and soon. because I've read reports of where we've gone ahead and poisoned our land so bad that, glyphosate is in pretty much every square acre. We've depleted the minerals. We are not replacing the fertilizer naturally. We used to use animal manures for that. And when we quit using that and started switching over to synthetic fertilizers, that's when we started getting sick. Somebody went ahead and read a report here a few years ago that says, yeah, we used to use animal manures for fertilizer. We spread them on there every fall and winter. Since we switched over to synthetics, we're a lot easier and convenient to spread. Yeah, well, we lost a link in the chain, and that's when we started getting sick. There's other factors too, but that's pretty much it. So anyway, let's go ahead. And a friend of mine sent me an email from Colorado. And I'm going to read it to you. This is from the Colorado State Shooting Association. Today we file another lawsuit. When House Bill 26-1126 reached the desk, we made it clear, this is to Governor Polis, if he signed this bill, CSSA would sue. He signed it anyway. HB 26-1126 gives government agents the power to walk into a gun store and demand firearm purchase records without warrant, without probable cause, and without even stating a reason. Now, right there, alarm bells going off in my head. Law-abiding gun owners can have their private information searched simply because they exercise the constitutional right. This is not how a free society operates. This lawsuit is more than the Second Amendment. It's also about the Fourth Amendment and basic principles that government should not have unrestricted access to the personal records of citizens without judicial oversight. You know what? Every Democratic president has gone ahead and weaponized the ATF and told them to go ahead and store personal information about firearm purchases. Every Democrat has done it. Bill Clinton did it. All right, he was caught. Barack Obama did it. He was caught. I haven't heard anything about Biden, but I'm sure he did it too. This has got to stop, people. You know what? We've got senators out there saying we need one permit so we can go ahead and carry constitutionally. No, we should be able to carry constitutionally without a permit, without the government's permission. It's not up to the government to know whether I have a gun or not. It's not up to the government to know whether how much money I'm making. That's not their business. I'll read on. The politicians who passed this law knew exactly what they were doing. They ignored constitutional concerns, ignored warnings from legal experts, and ignored the rights of Colorado gun owners. Yeah, how did that bill ever get it out of the judiciary? Unless the judiciary was packed with a bunch of flaming liberals who ignored the Constitution in the first place. That's what the Judiciary Committee is there for, to go ahead and peruse every bill to make sure it's constitutional. I'm just reading my Bible before the start of the show. Psalm 119, 158. I see the treacherous and am disgusted. My anger at the injustice in this country cannot be overstated. I stated that every episode of this show. It's about time we go ahead and apply the final solution. You know what? You go ahead and do something unconstitutional. We're going to take you out of your home and hang you. And we're going to go ahead and burn your house down. I'll read on. Now the taxpayers will be forced to spend even more money defending a law that should have never been passed in the first place. Yes. CSSA, Colorado Shooting Sports Association, spent months preparing this challenge. We have retained experienced constitutional counsel and assembled a legal team capable of taking this fight all the way through the courts if necessary. But lawsuits like this are not free. And I go ahead and I said, if you want to go ahead and donate to the CSSA, please do so. But we have similar, we're watching the mess unfold in Virginia. The governor there is doing the same thing. All right, she went ahead and had 5 gun control bills on her desk. Meanwhile, she had 4 or 5 bills dealing with criminals, all right, that she ignored. Yeah, she ignored them and passed the gun bills anyway. It's happening in Virginia too. You know, and the state's attorney general said, we're not going to enforce these laws. Well, you know what? It's about time you do it. It's about time. I'm calling on every state's attorney in these states that are highly firearm restrictive to go ahead and arrest these governors and the legislatures that have gone ahead and ignored the Constitution, because they're neck deep in fraud. I mean, just take a look at Minnesota and California. Wow, that's something else. Maryland Governor Moore just signed a Glock ban. Why Glocks? Because you can get a piece of metal and I fired one, and they're a lot of fun, but a lot of waste ammo. You know, you empty a 15-round magazine in about 1 second. But all this is going on, and this is not right, people. If they don't like our gun law, the gun laws in this country, which God gave us the right to keep and bear arms, all right, they can find another country to live in. I feel like I am Willy Wonka sitting there in front of the misbehaving children that are sitting there doing what he's telling them not to do. No, don't, please stop. And then sitting back and watching what happens. Yep, because it's going to happen exactly how I say it's going to happen. This is leading to totalitarianism. This is leading to a one world government. And why all of a sudden there's a big push when we have a pro-Second Amendment president? All right. Now, he said, I heard rumors that he's formed a new division of Department of Justice called the Second Amendment. Where are they? Why aren't they doing their job? Why aren't they storming these city capitals with a boatload of handcuffs, leading them out to be fingerprinted and arrested? No, you're leaving it up to the people. And they're not going to stand there much longer and let this injustice happen, because righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne, O Lord. Why all of a sudden is this going on? Why is sudden a big push? Because Satan knows his time is short. He wants the United States to go the rest of the world. Because if you take away the guns from the American people, they have no choice but to become slaves of men. And there's a scripture in there that says, you've been bought at a price. Do not become the slaves of men. People, we have got to go ahead and start taking the Bible literally. And not just as some big story or some big parable or, or a byword. It's God's word. He created this world, and he gave us the rule book to live it by. Yeah, I've heard people say, I don't like it when you call the Bible a rule book. Well, it is. It is. So, CSSA, good for you. I hope you win. I think we need to take it to the next level. You know, and it's funny about how it just goes on and on and on and on. They just don't get the message. and the electorate out there, they said, oh, we don't want somebody on the left or somebody on the right, so we're going to go ahead and vote down the middle. We want somebody so milquetoast, so neutral that we can't even tell where the stand is. And I've seen candidates like that. I went ahead and attended the District 20 convention here in North Dakota. All right. And the guy that took the convention gave the worst political speech in my life. He said absolutely nothing for 10 minutes. And I told him so after his speech. I'm like, yeah, you're probably going to take it, but you said absolutely nothing. But all his buddies were there to vote for him. No, stop, please don't. Danger ahead. Yeah, okay. You're going to go on anyway. Bad guy in the Texas church shooting. He was a felon. He was prohibited from owning firearms. Acquired one anyway. All the laws didn't stop him. Not the red flag laws, not the 15-round magazine ban, none of them. None of them would have stopped him. All right, because he got a gun anyway. And I read a book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn way back when, called The Gulag Archipelago. In fact, I still have it today. That was a 30-day read. 30 days. Every spare minute I had, I was into that book. And that gave me a good indication of life in the Soviet Union under communism. Enough that I formed the opinion many years ago that communism wasn't a good thing. And then I saw socialism in France, and that wasn't a good thing. All socialism is a polite form of communism. Yeah, that's kind of what we're at today. You think you own your land? Don't pay your property tax. See how 3 to 5 years later, government will be there to confiscate you and throw you off your land. Yeah, that's your land doesn't belong to you anymore. I went ahead and I had a dealing with a tax collection office here in North Dakota. They made an error, and I went ahead and called them and wanted to clarify it. And I kind of let her know that, you know what, you got sales tax, you got income tax, you got real estate tax. Every square inch of North Dakota is taxed. I mean, how many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars is that? I said, no, you pick one tax, one, and you live within your means like the rest of us have to do. I mean, we got sales tax, we got income tax, we got property tax, we got road tax, we got tax on gasoline, we got tax on just about everything. But yet, I don't see any restraint being held. And North Dakota is the prime jewel of the 50 states. We're still in the black. They're still hanging on to the legacy fund, and that was established from all the oil profits, So what are they doing about that? Absolutely nothing, I'm kind of afraid to find out how much is in it and what's going on with it. Maybe they'll squander it away somehow. But I heard a rumor that this Teddy Roosevelt presidential thing down in Medora, it was all built with private donations, but now there rumors circulating around that they want North Dakota to take over the maintenance and upkeep. And I'm saying absolutely not. You built it, you maintain it. Don't ask the taxpayers to do it. We didn't want it down in Medora anyway. Medora's out in the middle of nowhere. But we go ahead and keep going on and on and on. They keep finding new things. Somebody comes up there whining, oh, we need to do this. Oh, yeah, here's another $3 million for you. Yeah, the CVIC was Community Violence Intervention Center was screaming for more money, and Kevin Kramer went ahead and promised them $1.8 million, out of the federal funds. I'm just like, where does it stop? Where does it stop? You should be paying for an Army and a Navy. You should be paying for roads. You should be paying for a justice system, and that justice system doesn't work very well anymore. Yeah, people, my anger cannot be overstated. I am ticked off. Oh, believe it or not, I'm actually a very happy person, but when I get talking about this stuff, especially when I see God's word being ignored, and it's going to lead to disaster. I mean, doggone people, don't you realize? I mean, let me read Deuteronomy 28, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. And it's promised curses for disobedience. Remember Deuteronomy 28. The Lord will strike you with madness and blindness and confusion of heart. Yeah, that's what we have today. Okay. Nation whom you have not known shall eat the fruit of your land. Yep, that's it. Let's see. Here's the one. Verse 43. The alien who is among you shall rise higher and higher above you, and you shall come down lower and lower. Well, look at the status of our illegal immigrants. Aliens. Yeah, they're almost elected to the hero status. All we got to do is look at George Floyd. Look at what a hero he was, and he was a dirtbag. But the press went ahead and made him into a hero. And there were calls to defund the police at that time. Really? You want to take away our police departments who are there to protect us, and then you want to go ahead and further disarm us, so we have no choice but to go ahead and defend ourselves with ball bats and clubs, which I'm sure you'll go ahead and make them illegal too, because there's now knife bans in Great Britain. They went ahead and gave up their firing back in 1999. Now, 25 years later, they're being 26, 27 years later, they're being arrested for Facebook posts. Really? Yeah. Doggone, man, you take a look at my Facebook page. I got enough there to go ahead and get me sentenced for 35 or 40 lifetimes. But that's what freedom of speech is. Let me go ahead and tell you something. That freedom of speech was given to us so that we could disagree with our government and what they're doing without fear of being imprisoned. That's it. It wasn't about burning the flag. It wasn't about pornography. It wasn't, we covered it Friday that, there was somebody who said back in the early days that this was for a moral and religious people. This Constitution was given to them. It doesn't work for any other people, and as long as it's being ignored, we are going to be going down the tubes. Deuteronomy 28. Yeah, go ahead and read it for yourselves. That'll be an eye-opener. Oh. So anyway, yeah, we go ahead and we can't go ahead and stress enough the importance of God's word. All right. And speaking of trouble, Barry is in trouble again. Barack Obama. Yep. He's being, there's serious questions about Russiagate. Unbelievable. And I got to go ahead and point this out that, it's been reported now, I don't know if this is true, that Trump's going to go to Maduro for the opening of Teddy Roosevelt's library down there. But, you know, I noticed that he didn't show up at Barack Obama's library opening on Friday. Yeah, you go ahead, you don't have anything to do with evil people. You know, that's one thing that, you know, when after George Bush went ahead and got out of office, you know, 6 months later, he showed up with Bill Clinton in a commercial. No, if I was him, I wouldn't have had anything to do with Bill Clinton. You all know how I feel about Bill Clinton, or what I think about Bill Clinton. Feelings have no part in my vocabulary or in my life. I think. I don't feel. And you know what? I've been in meetings where, you know, you have men talk about, oh, I feel. I said, well, you know, and I go ahead and I kind of step back. Well, I think, you know, and yeah, anyway. But let's go ahead and go down. The Russia hoax. Obama knew it. Clinton knew it was happening. Biden knew it was happening. Well, maybe. Biden, I don't think Biden knew where he was. Comey knew it. Brennan knew it. McCabe knew it. Stroke. Clapper knew it. FBI knew it. Department of Justice all knew it. They documented, and this has all been documented. Whose house did they raid? They went after Donald Trump's. They raided Mar-a-Lago. Man, apparently they were looking for some incriminating evidence against them that they thought that Trump had. And they didn't find it, you know. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know, big news is going on, and that there's a new fraud breaking in Minnesota and California. Unbelievable, you know. And you know, 150 billion is the billion with a B is the number being bandied about. So you know, we're waiting for more on that one. You know, I don't see why Trump doesn't shut down the money. You know, this is taxpayer dollars, people. These are your taxpayer dollars being funneled into Somalis who are shipping it back home to Somalia to go ahead and continue their regime there. We're funding terrorism, people. We documented last week where 40 million was being sent from the United States to fund the Taliban. Yeah. Yeah. We are funding both sides of the conflict, people. That makes us not good people. Man, oh man. I mean, I'm having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have, you know, doing this. But, you know, I'm sitting there calling out these people as liars, cheats, and frauds, you know, and we have to go ahead and get rid of them. Now, how do we do that? Right here. If we don't get rid of them, all right, we just give them a slap on the wrist, they're going to be back to do the same thing again in the near future. But that's my phone going off if you hear that in the background. All right. But Cuba's Communist Party, you know, big news there. They just renounced communism, calling it a social disaster. And they're going ahead and embracing market reforms. So there you have it. Boy, conspiracy theory, there we have it. Yeah, conspiracy theory. Yeah, communism is bad for the people. Yeah, they went ahead and they just went ahead and said that. We have a situation developing, and it's coming to a head rather quickly in this country, that we have to go ahead and get rid of these evildoers. I've gone ahead and called that, on Donald Trump to go ahead and bring up the military tribunals. You know what? You put somebody in charge of them, and I will volunteer. We process it just like a processing station. Did you do this? Is your name on any of the documents? Yes, no, guilty? Yep. Outside, we're going to be hanging you in front of the Department of Justice at 6 o'clock. Corruption is so ingrained in our society that that's the only way we're going to be able to get rid of it, other than Jesus Christ coming down and saying, up time, gentlemen, enough. G.K. Chesterton, ran across this on the internet. He went in and made the quote, civilization is not destroyed by bad men. It is destroyed by weak men who do not defend what is good, because we let this go on for years, and it's all gradual. Back in World War II, at the end of the World War II, we had to go ahead and hang Nazi propagandist ministers and all their things. But we brought into this country, the Democrats brought into this country the underlings of the propaganda ministry, and they asked them, how did you do it? How did you get a whole country to follow a madman? And they said, and they told them, and that is what is being discussed today. We discussed the Iron Mountain blueprint from Blueprint for Tyranny. Yeah, that's how it got started. When we go ahead and bring in Germany's propaganda underlings and ask them how did they do it, don't you think that they might be planning on doing it in the future here? And it's been over time. Yeah, they said we did it in like 19 years or something when they first got elected in 1930, I think it was. And we started at that point, and we started gradually leading the people into it. Well, that's what happened in our country here. We had the Iron Mountain Blueprint for Tyranny video. I reference it, and I highly suggest that you go ahead and look it up. It's still on YouTube. And it's amazing how closely that's being followed today. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and I am sitting there saying, like, wow, that is amazing. And that's why, they wear us down. They wear us down and say, okay. They, like in North Dakota, we had a bill in North Dakota in the last several elections, to go ahead and legalize marijuana. Well, it wasn't on there this time. And, they wear you down. Say, okay, we'll vote for it because we're getting tired of hearing about this. Yeah, no. And it goes back to, the troubles in Colorado. Let's back up here a minute. That Colorado is a dope smoking state. We go ahead and have to realize that these people aren't thinking with a clear mind. The legalization of pot in Colorado has been a disaster. Has been a disaster. And yet they still cling on to it. I mean, we went down to Colorado here not too long ago, and I guess about 6 years ago now. And we were amazed at all the pot shops there were. All the furniture stores were closed down, but the pot shops were open. Yeah, gun shops were open too, We can't go ahead and keep electing middle-of-the-road politicians, because these people that run up moderates, to get your vote, they're going to go hard left once they get in office. Yeah, we can take a look at Colorado, Virginia, Maryland, California, Massachusetts, Virginia. I guess it's starting to happen in Maine too, people, this is a call to action. We have to go ahead and hold on to our constitutional rights. And this thing of lawfare, all they're doing is passing the law, which they know that they're going to be challenged in court. So that's for their lawyer buddies, that their lawyer buddies can go ahead and turn around and charge the state of Colorado, millions of dollars for defending this case, which they're going to lose. All right, if the courts in Colorado haven't been compromised, And I would think that if somebody takes this to the Supreme Court, take it, but you got to work your way up through the levels, and that's not right either. This should have been stopped, like I said, at the Judiciary Committee. But since it wasn't, and since we have no recourse, I'm reading several people that says they can't live in the United States under Donald Trump. Well, bye. Yeah. We don't have a fence around our country holding you in. If you don't like the policies of the United States, which stand for freedom and for God, then you can leave. You want gun control? Go over to Germany or England. They even speak the language there. Oh, with a slight accent. You like abortion? Yep, head over to China. You want corruption? Plenty of countries over in Africa. Yep. South America too. I like what El Salvador did with their Supermax prison. They went ahead and they elected a president who just sweeping went through. Now, some innocent people were caught up in this too, but we're not. These people are sitting there, the cell phone signals are jammed, all right? They are put in there 100 to a cell, and they got to go ahead. If they're let out and they get to sit on the floor for an hour a day, and they can't talk, they can't walk around, they can't do anything. That's the way prisons should be. And these people, these white-collar criminals that we documented on Friday, they go to these country club prisons, where they've got a gym and they got a golf course. They've got complete with country club, and they get to go ahead and serve their time there. No, I said, get rid of all those. Go ahead and put them in general population with the rest of the dirtbags. It used to be that in the old days when we saw barbarians coming across the hill, we knew what they were. They were here to rape, kill, maim, destroy, kill. They were out there conquering territory. Now, the barbarians are carrying briefcases and reside in Congress and on Wall Street. And they wear ties. We've got to go ahead and be able to recognize the enemy where we see it. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not in church and you're not studying your Bible every day, you are an enemy. Period. That might anger a lot of you out there, but I'm a patriot. Yeah, maybe. But you're still in rebellion to God. Oh, don't mistake me, but I applaud you, and I think you're doing right. But being a follower of God is a matter of the heart, and that's what it comes down to. Oh boy. I'm kind of, wow, that was quite an action-packed segment. And I see we got about 20 minutes left to go. We're trying to go ahead and keep these down to an hour or thereabouts. Because we got a lot of information we put forth and what's going on in the world, or specifically in this country. And what we want to do is bring attention to the things that are wrong, and that we need to go ahead and take care of them however way we can. And the legal system has been so screwed up. All right, let me go ahead and make this. We had a young lady disappear out of our local shopping mall here about turn of the century, 26, 27 years ago. And everybody was up in arms about Drew Shadeen and how. So anyway, the dirtbag Rodriguez was finally arrested. Now, there was a big wrangling over who was going to try him, either North Dakota or the feds, because it was a crime that he raped her and took her over to Minnesota and dropped her body in a ditch. Slough is what we call them up here. And I got to remember the facts. So he was found guilty. Well, first of all, let's back up. The Fed says we want to handle this case because, number one, it happened across state lines, and two, North Dakota doesn't have the death penalty. All right. And so anyway, North Dakota relented and said, okay, fine. His sentence here about 2 years ago was commuted from the death row by the same judge who sentenced him. These dirtbag lawyers went ahead and were researching their case, and they turn around and they successfully argued that, yeah, this was a mistrial in some small way, and that he doesn't deserve the death penalty. Meanwhile, they turn around, they bill the government $700 an hour for their research. No, that was an appeal. If he wants an appeal, which he has a constitutional right to, but he should pay for it himself. Or find a group that'll help pay for his legal fees. But these dirtbag lawyers are the problem. And you're going to find out, you try and seek justice. Oh yeah. You need to hire them or you'll be practicing law without a license. You can't represent yourself in court, Although I may be doing that here shortly. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the judge to a high standard of accountability. So we went ahead and covered a whole myriad of subjects today. But they're all went ahead and connected. And why is this confusion heart going on? All right, because that's what Satan wants. When we don't go ahead and have our minds anchored in the Bible, we are blown about to and fro by every wind of doctrine. All right. We have to know what's right and what's wrong, and there has to be a certain standard. That God set his standard here. And it would behoove all of you to go ahead and pay attention to it. And it's only going to get worse in the future, people. Like I said, if you don't like our laws that we have, or our Constitution that we have in this land, you don't like our traditions, there's the door. Nobody's holding you here. I saw on the internet that back in 2021 there was a recall effort against Gavin Newsom. Yeah. The citizens of California band together and they elected, but Gavin Newsom so packed the ballot box, and they were doing it openly. In fact, several of the poll watchers said they're doing this openly, and yet nothing has happened to him. He's still sitting in the governor's seat. And he won re-election. So that tell you anything? Yeah, massive fraud going on there. At least it seems to be indicated. I'm not going to say that there is or there isn't, but I would say that, yeah, there's indications that there are. It's like the 2016 election, Donald Trump went ahead and said that, yeah, now several states are saying, yeah, the 2016 election was rigged. Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, you name it. And they're just finding this out now. I mean, I had a neighbor come to me and says, do you think the election was rigged? I says, I can't tell you one way or the other, but I'll tell you what, there's enough red flags being raised that should be looked into. And he said, well, I think it was. And I says, well, I hope you're wrong. He goes, yeah, so do I. But it turns out it was. I don't go ahead and base my opinions on, I base my opinions on facts, not emotion. And I found out something that, the Lord will hold those people accountable, even if it takes 40 years, Yeah, 40 years. Man, I just can't say enough. But I'll say this one thing, and I think we'll wrap it up. When Paul says that, we have been bought at a price. Do not become the slaves of men. Once we have gone ahead and accepted Christ into our hearts, we have to be diligent to make sure that nobody's taking away that liberty away from us. All right. Do not become the slaves of men. Yeah. Don't listen to what they say. Don't stand firm in your faith. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I says, I went back to my high school 5 years after I got out, just 5 years. And it was amazing how the stringent rules we had going in there were now relaxed. First of all, that's about time they got rid of the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't do that anymore. They don't sing any patriotic songs. Well, we need to bring back the Pledge of Allegiance. We need to go ahead and introduce patriotism as being fashionable again, popular. Back in World War II, there were a lot of people signed up for the war, because that was their patriotic duty. Now the lines have got blurred about what being a patriot is. Now being a patriot, according to Hillary Clinton, is obeying what your president tells you. If you're not a patriot. Barack Obama, if you have more than a week's worth of food in your house, a born again Christian and a gun owner, you're a domestic terrorist. Yeah, see how that incrementalism works. Bill Clinton introduced the public health care, and he started doing that with HMOs. And Barack Obama and the socialists come across and says, "Oh yeah, we're going to be socializing the thing." And I went ahead and I made this prediction. I said, back when Bill Clinton did his tomfoolery, he went ahead and said, I said, the next guy's going to come along, the next Democrat's going to come along, and he'll be even worse than Bill Clinton. I said, he will introduce socialized medicine. Yeah, and that's exactly what he tried to do. Oh, man. They finally got rid of the reporting whether you have public health insurance or not. This is none of your business, government. That was another piece of paperwork we had to file out. We had to collect proof for. We had to go ahead and prove to the government no. Our government should be dancing to our strings, not us dancing to them. We got privacy statements all over the thing, and I pushed a test on that while I was in the military. And the Privacy Act of 1968 says I don't have to surrender my Social Security number to anybody I don't want to. All right. Well, we were at the firing range, and one of the instructors called out and said, I didn't put my Social Security number in. I says, yeah, that's fine. He goes, well, you'll be back here next month. I says, great, I'll shoot your ammo all day long, And then somebody piped up and says, oh, we can get it off the alpha list. Yeah, right. The Privacy Act, no, that doesn't mean anything. Go ahead and try to invoke the Privacy Act on your thing. Every company in the world says your data will not be released unless somebody with a badge and a gun shows up, and then, oh yeah, well, we'll surrender. Oh yeah, hey Larry, That was off the enemy of the state. Yeah. Guys show up, they were imposters, and they show their badges and credentials. Hey, yeah, they surrendered the film to the guy. And I said, yeah, you got a warrant? Yeah. No. I know it was just a movie, but that seemed to be the way it works these days. Although my bank said that, they'll go ahead and surrender, their video, under subpoena, so that's the only way they can do it. I said, well, good for you, right? Not everybody's that way. Yeah, and then I'm sure the CIA or FBI have got the subpoena press, so they can just type it in and print it out and hand it over. Well, look at what happened. Those judges that were supposedly okaying FBI's request for warrants and spy tap because of terrorism. Yeah, they were just okaying things without decent probable cause. They were just a rubber stamp. Boom, 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 boom. And we can't have that. We just can't have a rubber stamp Congress, a rubber stamp this and that, whatever the president wants, he gets, blah, blah, blah. We got to go ahead and stand firm in our beliefs. If you don't elect strong, born-again Christians to office, you're going to have chaos. And so we're seeing that now. I read to you that passage from Judges last week. Yeah. The trees were looking to elect a leader among them. And finally, they elected the bramble tree, the most worthless bramble tree in the world. We have got to go ahead and get our heads wrapped around the Bible too. If you go ahead and I was going to go over to North Dakota. I was called away on short notice, but I was going to go out to the North Dakota convention, and everybody that was running, I was going to stand up at that convention and say, I want anybody here who's running for office show a letter of good standing from their pastor saying that they know their Bible. This is what we need to get back to. Our Constitution was founded on the Bible. There's not one provision in there that's not in the Bible. I found out. That kind of hit me at a red light one time. I was reading something and I thought, wow, that's linked to our Constitution. In fact, I went ahead and was reading a passage in, oh man, what was it? No, right here. What was it? It was, I want to go ahead and the Philistines forbade the Israelites from having a blacksmith lest they forge swords and spears against them. And that and that is very important. That's where the Second Amendment came from. We got to go ahead and realize that God knows everything that's happening and is going to go ahead and hold us accountable. Those of you who are not upholding your oath of office are going to be judged. I cannot go ahead and state that strongly enough. You're going to be judged. So I would go ahead and say to you, either get your priorities straight or you'll be done away with. One of the two. Because the American people are not going to put up with this for very much longer. We law-abiding citizens are getting pretty ticked off. So you might find yourself dragged out in the middle of the night and strung up. Oh. Well, that's what I see. We're pretty much running out of time here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this show to a close. I'm going to say thank you for tuning in. And we will see you on Wednesday, I think. I don't think I have anything going on Wednesday. And we'll go ahead and present more to you. And we'll come up with a subject between now and then. But anyway, yeah, I know it seems like we were kind of all over the stage again today, but it was all connected. It was all connected. Again, I want to say thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. All right, and we'll see you later.